Hey guys, this is Real Appalachia with Shane.
And Melody.
We're back again.
That's right.
Now, I told you, I keep saying, y'all ain't gonna believe this. Mm-hmm. Y'all ain't gonna believe this.
Okay.
You know
Tell
that
us.
movie, Cocaine Bear?
I've heard of it.
You've heard of it.
Yeah.
Well, I happened to watch it here a couple of weeks ago. I was on night shift baby duty. So I started watching this thing, and that movie's kind of kooky. It's funny, but horror at the same time. Very gory. So if you're into that, you'll love it. If not, you won't. But anyway.
Okay. Don't sound like my style,
No.
but
Did you
I wanna hear
know
the story.
that it's loosely based on a true story, and a big portion of which happened right here in Appalachia?
Really?
Yes. And the backstory before the bear is nutty too.
Yeah.
But the backstory before the bear is just as crazy.
Yeah.
And the movie doesn't get into that at all, but we're here to tell that part of the story for you.
Yeah, and if you're like me and you don't want to see all the gore, but you would like to know the interesting story, then stick around. And you know the drill. Give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, all that good stuff.
Yes. The movie Cocaine Bear came out in 2023 and is already a cult classic with a huge following. Described as a horror comedy, the movie relies mainly on gore with a few humorous characters and quips sprinkled in for entertainment. The movie definitely is not for everyone, but it does have a rabid following that will ensure that it stays relevant for years to come. A lot of folks don't know that the movie is very loosely based on real events, much of which happened right here in good old Appalachia. The true story is almost as bizarre as the movie, so brace yourself. You ain't gonna believe this one. The man responsible for the Cocaine Bear has one of the most unique life stories that is almost impossible to reconcile. That man, Andrew Thornton II, often called Drew by his friends, started off as a lawman, then quickly turned into an outlaw. Thornton was born and raised in Bourbon County, Kentucky, the son of Carter and Peggy Thornton. Many have described him as a blue blood. He was raised around the horse racing industry and had a lifelong love for and interest in horses. He briefly attended the University of Kentucky for a semester before dropping out and joining the Army. He excelled in his military service and eventually became a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division. This training would come in handy later when he turned to a life of crime. Thornton received a Purple Heart for his service during the U.S. invasion of the Dominican Republic in 1965. After his military service, he re-enrolled in college where he attended for another year before dropping out again, this time to help his father train racehorses. In 1968, Andrew Thornton began working for the Lexington, Fayette Urban County Police Department, while taking night classes in law enforcement at Eastern Kentucky University, where he graduated in 1971. He was assigned to work in the Narcotics Division, frequently assisting the Louisville office of the Drug Enforcement Administration. You can probably see where this story is heading. Thornton valued education and continued his studies and went on to earn a law degree from the University of Kentucky. In 1977, Thornton left the police department and began practicing law, but it wouldn't be long before he found himself running afoul of the law. In 1981, Andrew Thornton was one of 25 men charged with weapons theft and drug conspiracy in Fresno, California. The men were accused of trying to smuggle half a ton of marijuana into the U.S. Thornton initially pled not guilty, then he went on the lam. He was finally tracked down hiding out in North Carolina and brought back to face justice. When he was captured, Thornton was strapped with a pistol and was wearing a bulletproof vest. He accepted a plea bargain that had him pleading no contest to misdemeanor charges in exchange for a 6-month prison sentence. He was also fined $500, given 5 years of probation, and was prevented from practicing law, but he did avoid a felony charge that would have resulted in a lengthy prison sentence. Rather than using his time in prison to become better, Thornton apparently used it to get better at it, because it didn't take long for him to go back to his old tricks. On September 9th, 1985, Andrew Thornton II took off along with Bill Leonard and an unknown Colombian man. The plan was to smuggle 400 kilos of cocaine back into the United States. Bill Leonard, who had been a karate instructor and friend of Thornton, would later claim to have no idea that he was about to be a part of a huge drug deal, stating that Thornton had duped him until springing the real plan on him mid-flight. Leonard was under the impression that they were headed for the Bahamas, but Thornton had other plans. He had rerouted the plane to Colombia for a major drug deal. In a scene straight out of a Hollywood movie, Thornton and Leonard landed in the dark of night on a small airstrip in a swamp in Monteria, Colombia, where they were greeted by a band of machine gun-toting Colombians. Soon the plane was being loaded with stacks of cocaine in burlap bags stamped USA 10. At dawn, Thornton and Leonard took off in the small Cessna plane headed back to the U.S. with a load of approximately 400 kilos of cocaine, worth over $200 million. Not long after they were in the air, Bill Leonard got deathly sick to his stomach. He had unwittingly eaten a parrot during their layover in Colombia, thinking it was chicken. The bird had made him ill and virtually incapacitated. As Leonard tried to recover, Andrew Thornton continued flying the plane and soon discovered that their plane was being followed by Drug Enforcement Administration jets. Thornton instructed Leonard to kick out 3 loads of the cocaine, presumably to lighten the load of the plane to help speed it up. This dump of cocaine took place over Georgia, which is where the Cocaine Bear will later come into the story. As the DEA continued their pursuit, Thornton began to make drastic plans to dump all of the rest of the cocaine out of the plane, except for one last duffel bag filled with around 77 pounds of the white powder. Thornton then informed Leonard that they would have to parachute out of the plane once they were above Knoxville. This news was quite distressful to Leonard, as he had never parachuted before in his life. Thornton gave him a quick 4-minute lesson in skydiving to prepare for the jump. He also laid out a plan for the two men to meet up after their parachutes landed with Thornton's girlfriend, Rebecca Sharp, at the Knoxville Hyatt. The plane finally got into the vicinity of Knoxville when Thornton tied a huge bag of cocaine to himself and prepared for the jump. Thornton essentially pushed Leonard out of the plane and then jumped out shortly thereafter once he put the plane on autopilot. The empty plane would end up crashing approximately 60 miles away in the mountains of Hayesville, North Carolina. Miraculously, Leonard landed safely despite his lack of experience and the fact they had jumped in the dead of night. He got himself together and headed to the Hyatt Hotel to meet with Rebecca Sharp, just as planned. Together, they waited for a few hours for Thornton to arrive, but to no avail. Fearing the worst, they decided to head back to Lexington, Kentucky without Thornton. As they were driving back, Leonard and Sharp heard on the radio the news that a parachutist had been found dead in a yard in Knoxville. The news obviously devastated Sharp, and Leonard attempted to console her. An 85-year-old man named Fred Myers had found the lifeless body of Andrew Thornton in his gravel driveway. Thornton was wearing khaki clothes, wearing Gucci loafers with several bags scattered around his corpse. Investigators found a 9mm automatic Browning pistol with extra clips, a .22 caliber Derringer pistol, night vision glasses, a survival knife, 6 gold Krugerrands, over $4,500 in cash, and of course the duffel bag filled with cocaine, valued at approximately $15 million. His wristwatch was something straight out of a James Bond movie, capable of shooting tear gas. Fred Myers said that Thornton would have appeared to be sleeping save for a trickle of blood that came down from his nose. As authorities tried to piece the facts together of what had happened, they traced the plane's path and over the course of the next few months uncovered several duffel bags of cocaine in northern Georgia. On December 23, 1985, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation discovered the dead body of a black bear in the Chattahoochee National Forest. It was determined that the bear had consumed a very large amount of cocaine, causing it to die of an overdose shortly thereafter. Dr. Kenneth Alonzo stated the almost 200-pound bear had eaten so much that her stomach was literally packed to the brim with cocaine. The autopsy revealed that the bear had suffered cerebral hemorrhaging, respiratory failure, hypothermia, renal failure, heart failure, and stroke, and probably a slight headache. The bear probably lived for 30 to 45 minutes before succumbing to its multi-million-dollar high. The story made national headlines, and the bear was quickly given the nickname of Pablo Escobar, a reference to the infamous Colombian drug lord Pablo Escobar. But the story doesn't end there, though. The bear ended up being sent to a taxidermist to be stuffed. The bear was then given to the Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area. A few years later, an impending forest fire in the area saw the park rangers put the stuffed cocaine bear and other artifacts into storage. Before long, the bear and other artifacts disappeared, and their whereabouts unknown but presumably stolen. It somehow ended up in the possession of outlaw country legend Waylon Jennings, who purchased it from a pawn shop in Nashville. Jennings later gave the bear as a gift to a man named Ron Thompson, a very prominent businessman in Las Vegas who had been a personal acquaintance of Andrew Thornton, so the cocaine bear headed out west to Sin City. Surely not the first cocaine user to take up residence in that city. Thompson kept the bear until his death in 2009. It then went up for auction as part of Thompson's estate and ended up being purchased by a Chinese immigrant in Reno for $200. He put the bear on display in his Chinese medicine shop until his own death in 2012. The bear went back into storage and might have been lost forever had an organization named Kentucky for Kentucky traced down its whereabouts to the widow of the Chinese immigrant, who still had it in her possession, shockingly. She was no fan of the bear and allowed the organization to have the bear for free as long as they'd pay the price of shipping. Now the cocaine bear resides inside the Kentucky for Kentucky Fun Mall in Lexington, Kentucky. It is by far their main draw, and they have a whole line of merchandise tied to the story of the cocaine bear. Maybe the most surprising thing about this story is that Johnny Cash did not have a song about this cocaine bear. Alright, so now is that a crazy story or is that a crazy story?
That is a crazy story.
So the guy, I don't know, what possesses a man who was a lawyer, had everything in the world going for him, dealt with racehorses and everything. Then he goes crazy, becomes a drug dealer, and unfortunately kills a bear in the middle of it all. So I don't know.
Anyways,
could you believe that story?
I can't hardly believe it.
All
Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.
And this one was bizarre.
Yes. So we hope you guys enjoyed this little tale, and if you did, let us know in the comments. We love to hear from you guys, and we will see you on down the road.